Welcome to a special edition of the Grizzly True Sports Network. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster. Today we're going to look at the Crosstown Shootout, which is the most heated rivalry in the country, no matter what those Duke and North Carolina people tell you, between the Xavier Musketeers and the Cincinnati Bearcats. And my guest today is a man synonymous with the Crosstown Shootout and Xavier basketball. Help me welcome to the show, Andy MacWilliams. How you doing, Andy?
The bile is building. The shootout is less than 48 hours away, and as usual, I can't wait. This is in my twisted mind, this is the premier sports event in Cincinnati. I mean, you could probably, a Reds World Series in 75, 76, maybe wire to wire in 1990 would eclipse this. A couple of Bengals Super Bowl losses, but year in and year out, the Crosstown Shootout is as good as it gets.
Yeah, let's face it, Andy, since 1990, this is about all we got.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We got to go with whatever works. And Xavier basketball's been pretty darn good. UC, grudgingly, yes. They've been good also.
Yeah, for a little brother, they've been pretty good.
And I tell you, I get so sick of. There's a group of UC fans who expect every year for Xavier to dry up and blow away. I mean, they have the attitude that this town, Cincinnati, is not big enough for two primetime NCAA D1 programs, and they think, well, this is the year that Xavier will crawl back into its hole and maybe de-emphasize the NAIA or drop basketball or something of that ilk. That ain't happening, I'll tell you right now. The Muskies are going to be in the Final Four a lot quicker than UC ever will be.
Yeah, and they've been a lot closer to being there since UC went in 92. But the thing that stood out to me is growing up, I grew up basically in the 70s. In UC, that was Pat Cummings and those guys kind of dominated it. It kind of switched, though, when we got to 1980. And the first game I remember watching outside of the late 70s games with Pat Cummings was the 1985 game between Byron Larkin and Roger McClendon. And I know you were telling me off air a little bit of how the shootout name came to exist.
Well, Byron was a watershed recruit for Xavier from Moeller High School, and all the biggies were after him. He was a great football player, a super basketball player, and Bob Stack, who really turned the whole thing around for Xavier when he showed up in 1979. Actually, he was 4-2 in 6 shootouts against UC, which is, that's the way it's been since Stack showed up. He recruited Byron, and it was Byron's freshman year was Byron against Roger McClendon, who a very good player. He was part of Tony Yates's first recruiting class. This was supposed to turn it around for UC. They had sort of hit rock bottom the year before in Yates's first season, 3-22 or 28 or something. And finally, it was like a game of whack-a-mole. They were going to hit Xavier on the head and drive him back into the ground. And McClendon was going to outplay Byron Larkin. And the game was at Old Riverfront Coliseum. And all the local media, they all predicted a UC victory. Yates was confident going into the game. Pete Gillen was the Xavier coach. And, they interviewed me. I guess I was the face of Xavier along with Pete. And I predicted a Xavier victory. And that's when I started calling it the Crosstown Shootout. It had been the UC Xavier game. In fact, back in the mid-'70s, there was a lot of talk about Xavier de-emphasizing to NAIA or Division III in basketball. They dropped football. And UC didn't want to schedule Xavier because they said it hurt their the efficacy of their schedule. So Stack came in, he changed the arithmetic. Now the UC fans thought that this was their time to get the upper hand on Xavier and put them back in their place. Well, Xavier won the game in a rock fight, I think 53-51. And Ralph Lee hit a couple of big free throws at the end, the veteran Xavier point guard. But Larkin was certainly outperformed McClendon. Xavier won, and everybody started calling it the Crosstown Shootout. Skyline Chili jumped in with a bunch of cash and bought the rights to the game. I forgot to trademark the Crosstown Shootout deal. I mean, Pat Was it Pat Riley out with the LA Lakers?
Oh yeah, the three-peat
thing?
Yeah.
Not that. The Crosstown Shootout probably would have made me about 8 cents, but I missed the boat by not trademarking that.
Well, I remember this rivalry was probably at the most heated from 1985 through about 2000. A lot of that was because of Huggins, Gillen, and those guys. But I remember in 1990, Jumpin' Jamal Walker. This was my favorite Crosstown Shootout. I think it was overtime or double overtime. Xavier beat Cincinnati. And the thing that really stood out to me was the channel that showed this game. I think it was WCPO, but I'm not sure. But they actually preempted. They did not let the State of the Union address preempt this game. They played the game instead of the State of the Union.
I was there, and I think we were doing, Joe Sunup and I were doing radio on WLW for that game. We didn't do TV. It was 90-89, Xavier in overtime. X came back to tie it late in regulation. Huggins went completely nuts with Rick Taylor, their athletic director, and claiming that an inbounds play was incorrectly called with a few seconds left, and they went ballistic. Xavier fell behind in the overtime by, I think, 6, and Michael Davenport, who is now in the Xavier Hall of Fame, hit back-to-back three-pointers. And then Jumpin' Jamal Walker, his strong point was never three-point shooting. Just a great point guard, very creative. He played a year with the Globetrotters. This guy was from Brooklyn. He was a bad practice player, but a great game player. He hit corner 3 to give Xavier a 1-point lead, and then one of the Bearcats, I forget what his Marcus Liberty, I forget what the guy's name was. One of their guys missed a shot at the buzzer, which was about a 30-foot heave. But and then during the game, I'd made some disparaging comments about UC's use of Pell Grants to get players eligible, and I was right. I was right on the money. I mean, the NCAA caught them in this, and they got off the hook. But so after the morning after the game, I was in doing the morning sports on LW. My program director came to me and said, Andy Mack, you've got to go up to Huggins and the AD's office and bring tapes. They want you to account for what you said on the air. I said, they can have all the tapes they want. They can have 50 copies. They don't pay me. I'm not going up on their turf and get reamed out by them. What I said was accurate, and they can pound salt. They don't pay they don't sign my paychecks. But that began a little Huggins Andy Mack feud, which continued on for a number of years.
Does it still continue on?
I mean, I have no respect for the guy other than he's a good basketball. I mean, he's a game-winning basketball coach, and I think UC did a good job. And there was a big move at UC and they had a bunch of money accumulated to get Frank Martin out of South Carolina when Cronin went to UCLA. And somebody with some smarts at the top of the food chain at UC said, too much risk with Frank Martin. We do not want to hire this man. And that opened the door for John Brannon. If they hire Martin, they continue a 30-year association with Hugs. Hugs to Cronin. Cronin actually went to Louisville, and because he knew he couldn't get a head coaching job out of the Huggins coaching tree. And he called Hugs on his way to Louisville on the cell phone to tell him that he was going to go work for Rick Pitino. Weird stuff, man. But Cronin's out of here. I want to start a GoFundMe page to keep him on the Cincinnati bench because Xavier beat him 8 out of 13. And now we got John Brannon, who he's harder to hate, I'll tell you. He's a good
coach.
He's a good coach. Did a great job at NKU, and I remember him in the old summer league at Purcell High School. He was the rebounder and outletter for a team composed of Chris Mack, the Wolf brothers, Marty and Steve, and Tony Rule, who was a sharpshooter for UC back in the day. And they won back-to-back summer league championships in Cincinnati when the summer league used to be great.
That was all big-time D1 players.
Mickey Van Exel used to come in and play, Tyrone Hill. I mean, the summer league is sort of like gone away now, but those were the days, and I liked John Brannen then, but I'm trying to develop a dislike. It's difficult because he's a local guy, and the Wolves like him, and Mac likes him. So, but I'm working on it.
We'll see. Maybe Saturday I'll put you over to Yaj.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
Now, after the 90 game, UC wins 5 of the next 6, which leads us up to the 1996-97 season, where UC is ranked number 1. And this game is known by most Xavier fans as the Lenny Brown game, and also for an iconic call by a certain guy who's on this show right now.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that call. Actually, my son, Brian, he's over 40 now. He was a freshman at Xavier, and we were talking on the phone the night before the game, and it was over at the Shoe in Clifton. I guess, what do they call it, Fifth Third Arena now?
Yeah.
But it really is the Merrill Shoemaker Center. Anyway, we were talking, and Brian said to me, you skipped me, the players, maybe the healer, James Ross, the trainer. We're the only ones who really think they can go over there and beat this preseason number 1 UC. Because, Xavier had 3 really good freshmen who had earned their spurs the year before in Darnell Williams, Lenny Brown, Gary Lumpkin, the point guard, and the Prop 48 guy who was the best of them all, James Posey.
Yeah.
Went on to win 2 NBA championships with Miami and the Boston Celtics. He was going to be eligible for the first time. This is a very early season game, and Xavier played him hard. UC had the lead with like 10 seconds left, and they had the ball. And their JUCO point guard did a crossover dribble. He wasn't being pressured even. The ball bounces up, and St. Denison, who was doing my engineering, caught it. I go, this is mana. This is a blessing from the gods. Xavier gets the ball down 1 at quarter court. They inbound it to Lenny Brown. He backs Darnell Burton into the lane and hit a float away, a step back 14-footer to win the game at the buzzer. Xavier wins it, and I go, UC, number 1 in the country, number 2 in their own city, which my son gave me the line. I just happened to remember it, and the circumstances dictated that it fit. So
it was a great
I've gotten
line.
A lot of mileage out of that one.
Yeah. It's the Cincinnati version of Al Michaels' 1980 Olympic hockey call. Do you believe in miracles?
Do you believe in miracles?
Yes.
Yeah, Michaels was like he was not a hockey announcer. He just happened to get assigned to that. A very versatile guy, and that's iconic with the Mike Eruzione and knocking off the Ruskies at Lake Placid.
Still the greatest sports moment I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. Actually, ABC taped that.
Yeah,
the Russians
I remember.
The Russians refused to change the game time because ABC wanted to move it into prime time on a Friday night, and the Russians refused. So ABC taped it and ran it at 8 o'clock, and it's still
Yeah, that game. The
still
start time was 5:15, if I remember. I was in 4th or 5th grade, and I remember coming home from school. I didn't turn the TV on, no radio on, and at 8 o'clock I watched the game and had no idea who was going to win when I watched it.
That was a great. Well, people don't remember that the coach, the Russian coach, Tikhonov, got into a big feud with Trajak, their great goaltender.
Yeah, benched him after the first period.
He wanted to prove to Trajak and the rest of the Russian people that he was the genius, Tikhonov, and he started this other goaltender who was like a sieve. I mean, nowhere near as good as Trajak, and that basically, that led to 2 or 3 U.S. goals right there. I mean, if Trajak plays the whole game, it's probably lights out.
Yeah, but he didn't, so people make mistakes. All right, so let's look at this year's Crosstown Shootout. Let's start off with Xavier. So far, I guess so good. I think they're 8-1. They led to 1 loss to Florida. They've got solid wins over Missouri, a good Missouri State team, Connecticut. What do you see when you look at this team?
I see a team with a tremendous amount of upside, a team that has not shot the ball well from three-point range, and maybe they never will, but they're getting so many good looks from out there. It's become a little bit of a psychological situation, especially with a guy like Jason Carter, the OU transfer, who can stroke it from three. He does it every day in practice. Actually, Kiki Tandy has played the last two games, and this kid, the freshman from Kentucky, he may be part of the answer to get Xavier up and running from three-point range. Great three-point stroke, and I expect him to play off the ball a little bit in the UC game and maybe do some damage from out there. Although freshmen usually don't have much of an impact on the shootout. It's so high pressure, and it's usually the veterans who win or lose it. Xavier's turned the ball over a little bit too much, and Travis has really been upset by their transition defense, which wasn't good against Wisconsin Green Bay, but they find ways to win. They have the core four, I call them, the two seniors, Tyreek Jones and Quentin Gooden. Gooden's starting to play well, and I don't think UC has anybody who can guard him. And Tyreek had sort of like a semi-concussion last year for the shootout. It sounds like an excuse, but he didn't play his best game. So those two, Quentin Gooden and Tyreek, are looking to not become the first Xavier four-year players in like 20 years to lose 3 out of 4 in their career to UC. That's a major incentive. And certainly the home court is huge. Yeah, UC is 1-7 against Xavier at the Cintas Center. The only win came when David West was a sophomore way back in 2001. Cronin was 0-5 against Xavier at Cintas. That's all history. If Xavier doesn't come in and play junkyard rebounding on the glass and take care of the ball and shoot it a little better, I mean, they get to the free throw line a lot. They just haven't made a real good percentage so far. I think Xavier wins the ball game. UC's got the home court disadvantage to fight, and I think Brandon is still sort of sorting through his point guard options. I think to win this game, he's got to play Jaron Cumberland at the ball handling spot a lot of points because he's a bulldozer. He's also been injured, and I don't know. He's a lot easier to guard when he brings the ball up and you know where he is. I mean, I think he's better on the wing, but I mean, who's he going to play at point? McNeil, the vagabond fifth-year guy, is quick as heck, but he has really not been too productive so far. And the freshman from Syracuse, Micah Adams-Woods, again, he's fast, he's long, but he's a freshman. I think he's got to play Cumberland, Jaron, if he's healthy, 30 minutes plus at the point to have a chance to pull the upset. And then the other Cumberland, Javon, is a good three-point shooter. He's been injured, but he can stroke the free. So if he has a big game, that could be problematic. The three really good veteran players for UC all have to play. They played well last year in a 62-47 UC win over in Clifton. But Trey Scott, he's a double-double waiting to happen. He's real good at 6'9". Keith Williams, the junior guard, I think he dropped like 21 against Vermont the other night, or 23. Very good, very elusive. Shoots it off the dribble, shoots the three. And Jaron Cumberland, all three of those guys, they've got to show up. They're the big three. They've got to play better than they did last year, and they were really good last year. And then Brandon's got to find some other guys to fill in some points, and they've got all sorts of defensive matchups against X. I mean, who guard when you have Quentin Gooden, Najee Marshall, Paul Scruggs, Tyreek, Carter, Tandy, guys like that. I mean, they're going to spread them out, and I don't think they got the players to guard those guys.
Yeah, and I think a freshman who could make an impact here is Zach Fremantle.
Oh, I agree, man. He is this guy. Talk about upside. This guy is, if he stays healthy, he's so competitive and so mature as a player. Yeah, I think he's going to be a freshman who will potentially have a major impact on this game because, you know, UC is not that deep. In fact, they're one player deep at the 5 with Chris Totes, who's played above his pay grade as a 7-footer. I mean, I thought he'd be a plow horse slow, but he's played well. But it's going to be vote against the world down there with Tyreek and Fremantle running at him. So we'll see how he holds up.
Yeah, and I know Coach Steele, when they asked him if he was happy with the performance to be 7-1 last night, and his claim was he doesn't care if they win or lose. He cares about how well they play, and that's what I really like to hear from a coach.
And he, a lot of people have that coach speak. He's getting the boys revved up, for the shootout. That Travis is a basketball savant. He respects the game. He does not like what he's seen in the huddles from his team. Practice attitude's been great, but in the last couple of games, their attention span has wandered. It's been maybe a lack of focus, maybe looking ahead to the shootout. I don't know exactly what's going on. Like Demir Bishop, who I really like, I think he's going to be a strong player for X down the line. He hasn't shot it well, but he's played a good floor game, almost game in and game out off the bench. He didn't even play, and Steele made it very clear, coach's decision, he's got to earn his time in practice. And Travis doesn't mince words. He has no problem wearing the black hat. He has his standards, and Xavier for the last from the Florida game through the last 3, they have not been playing up to his standards, and he's going to demand that, or you're going to see Dontarius James and a bunch of you're going to see. I don't think Tandy's going to start the game, but if things don't develop, he's going to play a lot of minutes.
Yeah, and I think we both agree this is Xavier's game. They just got to play up to their potential, which I don't think we've really seen this year for 40 minutes or even 30 minutes of a game. When you look at the Big East, though, the Big East Conference, especially with the rise of DePaul and I think Butler, who's been better than what people expected, this Big East, Xavier's going to have their hands full all year, so they need to kick this into gear pretty quick.
Yeah, the Big East is, the bottom, the 8 and 9 teams in the preseason poll are the 1 and 2 teams right now in the non-conference standings. DePaul went to 9-0 last night, and now people will say, wow, they played Chicago State and Illinois Circle. And no, they played a very competitive schedule. They have road wins over Iowa, Minnesota, Boston College. That's no big whoop. But they beat Texas Tech last night in Chicago, an amazing game. But they forced overtime and then beat a pretty good Tech, not the Final Four caliber team of last year, but it's still a really good Texas Tech team, 65-60. DePaul is 9-0, fastest start since Ray Meyer, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummings, Dallas Comanges, all those guys played for DePaul back in like the mid-'80s. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to win the league, but they're definitely going to be, they could be rated next week. They could be top 25.
They should be ranked next week.
Shoot, they've got some quality wins. And then Butler, Kamar Baldwin went off for 31 last night, or the other night, and they won at Ole Miss, and they're 8-0. They're already poll at 24th or whatever that's worth. And what about Georgetown? They lose James Akinjo, who was freshman of the year in the Big East last year, and they lose Josh LeBlanc, who arguably is the best small forward in the Big East. He was a freshman last year. He didn't call his own number, but he jumps out of the gym. They both were kicked out of school. And they walk into Oklahoma State in Stillwater without those guys. And Patrick Ewing, is the puppet master. He gets McClung to drop 33, and they beat Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Now, I don't know how good Oklahoma State is, but they're a Big 12 team playing in their own backyard. And G-Town with, 2 of their top players gone, transferred immediately. Like a day later, they split the switch and win that game.
Yeah, and you look at St. John's, they have a good record, but they haven't really played anybody yet. They lost to
Have they
Vermont by a
played
couple
anybody in
points.
the last 3 or 4 years in the preseason other than they beat
No.
Duke once at Madison Square Garden? Now, they must have poisoned the Gatorade or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and
But
we've got Creighton's not a bad team. They beat Texas Tech also this year at home. Actually, I think that was just last week or so, but I'm not sure. I think it was at the end of November. So Creighton, you know you're always going to have your hands full when you go to Creighton to play.
yeah, almost, they'll have the place filled. I mean, they put 19,000 in that building. They're totally nuts there for basketball, and uh, McDermott's style, he's not going to change it, is let it fly. They're going to shoot 50% of their shots from three. He plays four guards, and he doesn't have any big guys, but when the ball goes in consistently from outside the arc, you don't need the offensive rebound. So, Creighton's very entertaining unless you're playing against them.
Yeah, and then we've got Villanova's course as always. They were probably the favorite coming into this, but they don't look to be as good as what people expected.
Yeah, I think that by the time that, and coincidentally, every year almost, Xavier has to open up at Villanova. You think Jay Wright is trying to make a statement? I mean, he has a little power in the league. Xavier always is at Villanova, at the pavilion on campus, like in late December, early January, mid-January. It's like clockwork. He's trying to pound a stake into their heart early and show Xavier who's boss in the league. Anyway, Xavier opens up at Villanova December 30th, and by that time, I think Jay is going to have his 8-man rotation humming like a Mercedes-Benz. I mean, they have a lot of talent. They're a little young. They have basically no seniors. Gillespie, the point guard, is their veteran guy, but he had a great recruiting group. I don't think they're as tough and as battle hardened as when they had Arcidiacono or Brunson or Josh Hart, guys like that. I mean, they don't have quite that grit, and maybe that'll be their Achilles heel. But I think 13 wins may win the Big East this year. 13, 14 knocks, and if Xavier can go 12-6 in that league, and maybe finish the non-conference with a win over UC, at least one win between Wake Forest and TCU on the road. They're going to be in a strong NET NCAA evaluation tool range. I mean, you're talking top 30. And the first NET, by the way, comes out a week from Monday. All these RPIs, Sagarin, AP, USA Today, Coaches Poll, all those numbers are interesting but irrelevant. The NCAA put so much emphasis because they invented this proprietary NET system, and they go daily updating it now, starting on December 16th, and they have that month early TV reveal and all that stuff. They got a lot of money, a lot of TV ratings invested in this thing. The NAT is the be-all and end-all. And Xavier sort of got screwed by the NAT last year. I thought this year, if they deliver here at the end of the non-conference and win 12, 13, even 11 Big East games, they're going to be the cock of the walk when it comes to Selection Sunday.
All right, I want to bring this up too because I just thought of this. Because in the mid-1980s, who would have thought that Xavier would beat a team in the major conference? And isn't UC kind of a mid-major now?
There's no other way to face the AAC. Whatever. What is that? The All-American? I mean, I don't know.
The All-American Conference. They're good at football.
It's sort of like the ship of fools. I mean, a lot of people who don't have nowhere else to go to the AAC. Look at Connecticut. They're getting the hell out of that league. They're going to cut their football loose and go independent just to get back into the Big East next year as our 11th team for men's and women's basketball. I hate to do it, but I think UC is going to be in a position in 2 or 3 years to be included in a reshuffle of power conferences. I have UC football for TV ratings purposes because UC delivers both the Cincinnati Metro and the Dayton market survey area. They need those two MSAs are going to come together. They're going to be considered one metro complex, and that's going to be like number 19. And they got to have UC in the mix for football. And,
and if you look at
I think they're going to get into some reconfigured super conference deal.
Yeah, because if you look at the AAC football-wise, with Cincinnati, Central Florida, Temple, Memphis, Navy, SMU, those are all 9 and 10 win teams, and I think you can make the case this year that the AAC football-wise is better than the ACC.
I don't think there's any argument there. I like UC football. I think hopefully they'll hold on to Luke Fickell. They're a lot of fun to watch. They have. He's done a great recruiting job inside out within 200 miles of Cincinnati, and that's what Ohio State does. And he certainly, is a product of that system. Fickell's done a great job, and I like it when UC football is competitive.
Well, yeah, as long as they don't bring back Xavier football.
Well, Xavier football is undefeated since 1973, basically because they haven't had a program. So
they're also winless, Andy.
Yeah, that's true. Well, whatever.
All right, Andy, I want to thank you for coming on, and I know you're going to be on a couple other shows in the tri-state area over the next 24 hours. You want to tell people where they can hear you?
Well, we're going to be Brad Redford and I. Brad, my alter ego, my little buddy. He and I are going to be on with Willie Cunningham and Zach Dennison on the Student Report, 700 WLW, 1:30 tomorrow afternoon. We do all this preparation for that show. We bring in charts and graphs and stat sheets, and we never talk, but I expect to be talking about. I don't know what Willie will do. He'll probably bring Mick Cronin. He and Mick are golfing buddies, and Mick will probably be there on the phone from Los Angeles taking shots at me. I don't know.
Well, maybe you could have Hugs on, too.
Yeah, that really would bring down the level of the discourse, that's for sure.
Well, I would definitely listen for sure then anyways.
I think Hugs has they're undefeated. West Virginia's off to a good start. They got a Moeller kid, Miles McBride, playing off the bench for them at point guard. And they've got a game against the Butler Bulldogs at Hinkle Fieldhouse on Saturday.
Oh, UCLA does. I didn't even realize that.
No, not UCLA, but
West Virginia. All right. Yeah. UCLA Butler at Hinkle Fieldhouse would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm sure Mick is going to be bringing his team east to play at Hinkle.
He don't want to come get his ass kicked by Butler.
With Xavier. I don't think a series with Xavier between Mick and Travis is going to take place either, but I may be wrong.
You never know. Maybe the NCAA tournament if Mick doesn't get fired before he gets him there.
Oh, I'd love to match up with Mick in the tournament because he never wins.
I know. Well, it's kind of like Hugs. So Hugs had a year or two there. But I'll tell you, the one year it was cool with me that Hugs won because they beat Kentucky. And no matter how much I hate Hugs, I hate Kentucky more.
Yeah, it's right there. They're neck and neck with me, those two. Kentucky, when Evansville beat them, that was a high point when I heard about that. And, NKU and Brandon, they gave Kentucky a heck of a game 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, in the tournament, they only lost by 8 points to them.
Yep.
That would have been great, too, by the way.
I don't know. Coach Cal, I remember him from UMass days. He does it his way, and as long as the NCAA doesn't turn over too many rocks, he seems to succeed.
Yeah, but it's succeeding at Kentucky is winning national championships, which he's not been doing as of late.
Yeah, they're a little sour about that, but all I can say is I love you and I love the Cats.
All right, Andy, it was great having you on. I will see you Saturday at the Crosstown Shootout. I want to remind everybody that you can follow us at Grilling Truth. Andy, what's your Twitter handle?
At MM, both lowercase, _ and impact. At MM _ and impact, MSC.
That's an awful lot of letters. And some underscores would always confuse me. Because as my eyesight's gotten better, or worse as I get older, I have a hard time finding the underscore thing.
And I can't figure out where it is, but that's what they gave me. So.
Well, I can tell everybody this. If you want to find Andy Mack, if you just put Andy Mack in the Twitter search box. You can find him that way too. Andy, it's always an honor to have you on the show. And hopefully, maybe we'll have you on Monday or something to talk about a Xavier win.
Sounds good. I'm glad somebody remembers me. And, I'm an old guy, sort of like puttering along, and it's always fun.
All right, guys. Remember, you can hear all of the Grueling Truth shows on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, over 300 outlets. Basically, just go on Google, search the Grueling Truth, and you'll find us. So, for Andy MacWilliams, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.